Paromita ma'am, I think you are muted. Could you please restart? Let's restart.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. A very warm welcome to all of you joining us today for one of the most popular talk show series by DPS Bangalore East, Power Hour, which focuses on literary explorations by renowned authors. I am Paromita Chattaraj from the English department, and I'm extremely thrilled to be your host today for the evening. I am joined by my co-host, Ms. Meghna Mukhopadhyay, also from the English department. It is with great excitement and sense of literary wonder that we gather here for today's talk show, which promises to be a rich and an enthralling journey beyond the boundaries of our everyday life into the enchanting world of literature. We look forward to enriching discussions, chats, and ideas exploring various aspects of literature. So without further delay, let's open the pages of our minds and embark on this captivating journey into the realm of literature. Our talk show promises to be a celebration of creativity, imagination, and the power of the written word. I now take this opportunity to welcome our distinguished panel members for the talk show today. Let me start by welcoming Dr. Deepthi L. Sharma. Dr. Deepthi L. Sharma holds a doctorate in ecology and biodiversity and has nearly 2 decades of research cum practical experience in the field. She is the founder of 3 organizations: the language editing service, Poison Pen, the environmental science-related Terra Nero Projects Private Limited, and the plant nursery cum R&D center, Urban Econo. She is also the author of several books in English as well as Hindi. Despite not having a formal academic background in literature, she started writing around the same time. In fact, her PhD thesis and her English translation of Hindi classic Chandrakanta came out around the same time. During this period, she also started her English editing service, Poison Pen, which is dedicated to the research community struggling to find suitable proofreaders who can simultaneously address grammatical and scientific aspects. The COVID-19 lockdown encouraged Dr. Deepthi to relook at her writing, and during the 2-year period, she wrote 3 full-length novels, more than 10 short stories, and several poems and articles in both Hindi and English, giving an outlet to the unique experiences she had gained as an ecologist who also happened to have the heart of an author. Her Hindi poem collection, Chir Naveen Mahabharat, and an English short story series for children, Gullu and Nanaya, were published during this period. Dr. Deepthi continues to string words into rhymes and tales, apart from penning scientific papers and reports, while sitting at her cozy green plant nursery or at her happy home with her husband and 2 kids in Thane, Maharashtra. Her upcoming young adult eco-thriller series, which is currently being trademarked as India's first, will be hitting the bookstalls in the coming few months. A very warm welcome to the show, Dr. Deepthi.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You have really read out everything, and I was feeling, oh my God, ye kya ho raha hai? What am I listening to? But thank you so much. Very flattering, very flattering. I'm so flattered. Good evening.
It's our pleasure to have you on board.
It's my pleasure that you invited me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deepthi. It is indeed a pleasure to have you here. Our second distinguished guest for the show is Miss Uma Sarangan. Miss Uma's journey started into writing during her college days. Though she had taken up computers as major at both UG and PG, she pursued her interests in the field of writing. She went on to participate in poetry competitions at her college, and the accolades that followed gave the fillip to her poetic spirit. It was not just poetry to which she limited herself. She experimented with other forms of creative writing by taking short term assignments as an intern and part timer before joining her PG program. Eventually, she decided that her passion was not in software, but core writing. So she forayed into content writing with her first breakthrough being Manipal Global. And thereon, she has engaged with many industries such as travel, food, yoga, IT as a creative writer. The hiatus during the pandemic year enabled Miss Uma to compile her poems and bring it out in the form of her maiden publication, Expressions, Unlocking the Tales of a Lifetime. This book of poetry features many themes from the lockdown, yoga, travel to women empowerment, urban living, and nature. Apart from writing poetry at leisure, Miss Uma loves to read and blog about travel, yoga, and social issues. A very warm welcome to you, Miss Uma.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me for the show. As a language enthusiast, I feel the concept of having an English week really gives us the opportunity to celebrate language in all its latitudes. And especially it's very relevant in these current days and times when we have restricted the use of language to, let's say, Chatlinko or, Instagram form of communication. So I guess I just look forward to celebrating language with all of you through this enriching discussion.
Very glad, extremely glad to have you here, Miss Uma.
Thank you.
Now I would like to brief our guests as well as our viewers on the structure of the program. We begin with the questions round, wherein we ask 3 questions per guest, and then we have the rapid fire round. Thereafter, we would request our guests to make the closing statements.
Thank you, Meghna. Now we will begin with our question round, and my first question goes to Dr. Deepthi. So we often see that many people desire to write. They feel impressed seeing others pen down feelings and thoughts articulately and effectively. But somehow not all succeed to do it well. How can one start to write? What are the initial steps to embark on the journey of writing? How did you get inclined to writing?
So I'll answer your last question first. How did I get inclined to writing? See, I was lucky enough to get born into a family of readers. My grandfather and my father, they are both extremely avid readers. I have thousands of books at my home. My grandfather's place is full of books that he has read. Lots of them are rare books out of print now. It's a veritable treasure. In fact, I invite all book lovers to my place in Patna and to just get thrilled. So I started reading because of that kind of upbringing. Secondly, in any art form, be it literature, be it painting, be it music, it is a form of self-expression, right? All artists, I feel, are first and foremost very selfish people. We do anything because we want to, give an emotional release to our thoughts, our, feelings, our emotions. So for me also, it began in the same manner. And because I had been reading, I was not born into a family of musicians maybe or painters. So I started writing because I had been reading a lot. And in any craft, I feel there are two pillars, the what and the how, the technique and the subject. So while reading a lot of books, reading the classics, reading the best of the authors and the poets, you get to understand the technique, you get to understand the nuances of it, and you learn how to create your own technique, how to experiment with it. So the how comes from there, but the what, which is the second most important pillar, it will come, I suppose, from 2 different sources. One will be for an imaginative author, his own or her own source of imagination. I am not a very imaginative author. It is a very weak point of mine. I am rather an experiential and realistic author. I like to write fiction, but it is firmly rooted in tenets of what is possible. So I haven't explored fantasy or magic realism yet, but I would say that the what comes from, in my case, the experience that I have had visiting different places or studying a huge variety of topics under the concept of ecology and environmental sciences. So I feel, yes, that is what has made me a writer, the what and the how, reading and experiencing. And I feel for all of us, if we have a natural tendency towards reading, somehow our emotions will find expression through writing. The key is reading.
That gives a very good idea, Dr. Deepthi, and it's really a very big inspiration to all the children and adults aspiring to write.
Please read.
Yes, sure. Yes.
My first question is for Miss Uma. Creative writing has been your forte from a very early age. What kind of research do you have to undertake when you want to write? How do you choose your themes? Do you also face writer's block?
Yeah, see, when it comes to research, it depends upon the subject, okay, and the format of writing. So let's say, for instance, the subject is travel. And for that, the research will involve like reading travel diaries or interviewing people who've been to certain places which I have not visited. So that kind of, I give the perspective of a third person and add my own segment of imagination or creativity to it. But when it comes to blogging, the approach would be totally different. Or when it comes to any other subject, let us say talking about a software service, there again, the degree of research and the approach, format, or the template of writing. So it varies. It varies from subject to subject and the format of writing that we choose. For an emailer communication, which is very essential when you're working as in the marketing department of any company, there are different formats and templates which we follow, and there are different research leads also which we take on. So depending on the domain and the format, we take it as a stepping stone for the next process. So on the next part of your question, as to say, like, could you repeat the next part, if you don't mind?
Sure, ma'am. So my question was actually, creative writing has been your forte from a very early age. So what is the kind of research you have to undertake when you want to write? And secondly, how do you exactly choose your themes and whether you face writer's block? It's actually a very long question. It's divided into parts.
Yes.
So just tell me how you choose your themes and also if you're facing any kind of writer's block or not.
Yeah, the themes,
and how to deal with it, most importantly.
Yes, the themes which I choose, let's say for my personal writing, let's say for my blogs or poetry, it's what inspires me. So there are social issues. There are social issues which probably deal with women empowerment, which probably, challenge the patriarchal system of a society. Or let's say it's nature, the man versus animal or man versus nature conflict. Those kind of themes where, like, let us say I'm not able to do much to change the system. I'm forcing myself to be a part of the system, but at the same time, I want to, awaken the consciousness of all who are part of this human society to see that, what is happening is wrong. So that is the themes. Okay, that's where the theme factor comes in. That is for personal writing. Whereas when it comes to delivering for somebody else, for a client, the theme is, again, template-based. It's like we work within fixed templates. And yes, coming to the writer's block, I do face writer's block, innumerable times, let's say. Even last week when I was sitting down to write a poem of 10 lines, I breezed through the first 9 lines. But the 10th line, I was stuck as if, like, I could compare that as an experience that you face on Bangalore roads, the worst traffic choke. That's the kind of writer's block I do face. But yes, there's no navigating around it. But my solution usually is I let it rest. I let it go. I do something else and then bounce back to it when I again find the spark of inspiration. It comes from somewhere. It comes from within or it comes from somewhere outside. Though writing is an intrinsic process, but the stimulus somewhere lies from, we derive from the outside environment as well.
That was wonderful, Miss Uma. I am sure your inputs will enable our viewers to express their thoughts, emotions, and ideas through the power of words. So, my next question is for Dr. Deepthi. Literature and nature have been intertwined since time immemorial. So, how do you see this nature literature relationship? As an ecologist, how do you unite both these passions of yours, being a nature enthusiast and writing?
Great question. Thank you for asking this. See, in many ways, nature is the input. It is the stimulus that Uma ma'am just mentioned, the stimulus that comes from outside. So when I'm with nature, when I'm away from the bustle of everyday life, everyday city life, honking horns and stuff, then I really feel a lot of ideas rush into my mind, a lot of points, thoughts that have perhaps been sleeping in my head for a long time. They suddenly emerge. And then lots of times it so happens with many authors, many other writers, that these thoughts, they are so strong that they propel you to write. So literature becomes the output. It is almost like, I think it was George Bernard Shaw who said this, that authors write for the same reason as a cow gives milk or something like that. So it's a very natural process. And that is why it's no wonder that the output is stimulated by nature's input, right? So I think even many other people have accepted this, that, there are famous lyrics of Hindi movie songs written along the beaches of Mumbai on a moonlit night, or maybe, visiting the hillsides of Lonavala. So nature inspires literature in more ways than one. In my case, because I have been an ecologist, and before that I graduated as a microbiologist. So, I have found poetry in bacteria and viruses also, because if you look deep inside it, poetry is something so basic to cells and organelles. The science department, had it been here from your school, they would have, laughed at this thought, but I have written short stories involving DNA and RNA and mitochondria, and I have written poetry involving species of trees. So in a more prosaic manner, nature gives me a lot of different topics to write on. And apart from the experience and the way it makes me feel. So I guess that's it in a single sentence. Nature is the input, literature is the output for me.
Truly said, Dr. Deepthi. We all know that nature and literature are inseparable, and this relationship has been reflected through writers and poets like Wordsworth, Keats, and the list is absolutely endless. But what you gave to us is a fresh perspective. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Deepthi.
Truly enriching, Dr. Deepthi. As you said, Lonavala, yes, it's definitely a beautiful place, and poetry can be an inspiration for writing poetry. Coming back with my second question for Ms. Uma. In a world saturated with digital content, do you think books are losing their relevance? How would you inspire the present generation to read more? Often people say that they do not have the time and patience to read. So what would be your advice for them to start reading with?
Yes, coming to the digital age, I wouldn't say that books are losing as much relevance, but they have taken a new avatar. I mean, of course, people are not leaning more towards the classics or the fatty tomes. But yes, there is this craving for metro reads, and more inclination towards reading the Kindle versions of any book that is available. So yes, there is a lot of innovation happening in the readership industry too, and yes, books are also evolving at the same time. As for getting to have reading or develop the reading habit, I guess it should start at a young age, and people. For children, definitely parents should be involved, and they should make it a point to create an ambience. So everything, that has to be nurtured, be it any habit, that needs an ambience. I mean, we take science, for instance, if we want our child to develop interest in the sciences, we get the models and stuff so that, they kindle the scientific temper. And the same applies to reading. So if you want your child to be enthused, we need we have to ensure that we create a reading nook within the house. Every household must have a library, a mini library of sorts. You needn't span across multiple dimensions, but a shelf, a prominent bookshelf is enough in a nook in the house. And for those who are like past that age and who want to resume reading after a hibernation phase, I would say that comic books are also a good start. I mean, those with a mix of text and visuals. I mean, they do cater and to the new generation needs, and they don't demand or are not exacting in terms of being engaged or focused for a long time. So this comes with the digital age and being in a world of gadgetry. People are fatigued too soon. People are not ready to sit with a book like G.B. Shaw's or let us say Shakespeare. They would prefer an abridged version because attention span is short and limited. But we have to make a conscious effort to make reading as a habit and integrate it as part of a healthy lifestyle. I mean, it's very important for our social and mental well-being. Reading is important because it takes us, it helps us make peace with ourselves at the end of the day, and it helps us zone out once a while, and which I don't think any other avenue, online medium offers. Be it gaming or whatever is available these days. So I'm pretty outdated that way. So yeah.
That was very encouraging, Ms. Uma. I mean, talking about books can also encourage young people to understand texts better and support them to feel more confident about their reading skills. Coming up with my next question to you, Dr. Deepthi. How easy or difficult is it to bring characters, plot, scenes on the same platform? How do you conceive a book or a story? Do you begin with the characters and then you build a plot around them? Or do you have a concept in mind and then you create characters and give it a shape? What is the usual pattern for writers?
Okay. As with your earlier question, I'll again answer the last question first. I don't know whether there is a set pattern, but in general, I have heard that writers are divided into plotters and pantsters. The plotters will sit and meticulously plot their stories, that ye scene yahan jayega, this scene will come here, and then this character will say this or this dialogue. And the pantster simply starts writing and just goes on and on and on, and wherever the verbal diarrhea stops, the book is ended, and then he or she will say, okay, now I'll check in the second draft whatever happens. So in my opinion, it will vary with person to person, of course. It will also vary with genre to genre. Like when I was writing the eco-thriller series, they're all murder mysteries. I cannot afford to be a pantster there. I have to be a plotter, because meticulous level of detailing is required, which clue to give where, and which place I am suddenly, unmasking the criminal unintentionally and all that. So a lot of effort, a lot of plotting goes down in that sort of genre. But when I'm writing my kidlit books, I realize that I'm much of a pantster. I simply sit and start, and whatever experiences I've had with my kids and my nieces and nephews and their entire friend circle, it all comes, and I simply write down a story in say 15, 20 minutes or half an hour. Kidlits are very small stories, they're barely 500 words. So yes, one thing, it will depend on the genre, it will depend on the person. It will, now to your earlier part of the question, what comes first? No, that will differ again, I feel. Like, I'll give you an example again with this eco-thriller series that I was writing. For a project of mine, I had visited a place called Bilavdar in Gujarat. There's a huge black buck sanctuary there. And I would encourage all of you to visit, although it was not a typical touristy spot. But it is such an, intriguing place. It is so empty, so flat and so empty. You'll not believe that you're in India. And, the intertidal zone is miles long, and it is glittering with salt. And on moonlit nights, it's a vision in itself. So when you are in a setting of that sort, immediately, you're pushed into thinking that, okay, a story must be set here. And then suddenly, if you are traveling in a Mumbai local and you come across a intriguing person sitting beside you, is talking on the phone, and suddenly says a dialogue, and you feel, okay, this dialogue has to go into the book that I'm writing, and you somehow work it out into a scene. So in a way, yes, that is how it happens. But if I were to give a simple answer to your question, it will be, I must know the beginning and the end. If I know how I'm starting, and if I know where I'm ending, only then I can get down to, write a story. Otherwise, I just cannot do that. All the plotting and the scenes in between, I know then how to make it happen. But if I know where I'm heading, only then that is possible. So as the ma'am said, your last line of the poem, the 10th line, it's a very important point, isn't it? Where to end. So if that is clear, then I can write. Otherwise, stories have been there in my head for like years and I have not started writing them till I found out the end. So that's the answer.
That was really informative, Dr. Deepthi. I mean, there are so many layers to writing, and thank you for such an insightful perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Deep. My next question is for Miss Uma. Does the author's personal life play any role, or is it reflected in his or her writing or writing style? Which genre do you feel should any beginner explore initially? And finally, what advice would you give to aspiring writers?
I would say the writing style is as a blueprint for any budding writer. It comes from his or her favorite author. For instance, I grew up soaking Woodhouse like a sponge. I mean, I used to read Woodhouse like anything, day and night. So to an extent, his style of writing, that wry sense of British humor, I had imbibed initially. But then as you grow and as your thought processes mature, you imbibe certain elements which are very unique to you. I mean, which are very unique to your spirit and very unique to your expressions. And that compounds with your blueprint, and you develop with a distinct style of writing. And of course, and each style of writing, and with that style of writing, that adapts to different media and formats, which I had explained earlier. So for those who want to, coming to the next part of the question, for those who want to actually kickstart reading the genre they would like to, I think that's very subjective. I mean, it depends on the person's area of interest. I mean, for instance, like when I initiated my kids into reading, I picked a very general theme. I mean, I introduced them with the Zeus books because it has a mix of illustrations and it has that rhyme and rhythm to it. So that, the first mode was engagement. That's what I was seeking. And for those who are like in the adolescent phase or anything, probably like what they connect to at best. I mean, let's say fantasy or science fiction. And I would also like to recall this instance when both my kids are readers. They were voracious readers till they were till the onslaught of the world of gadgetry. But the moment they saw the movie Oppenheimer, my son was very eager to pick the book because the movie is based on a novel, and he is. I mean, he's showing much interest in reading that book on a daily basis. So that relatability, I mean, it plays a very vital role in any person's life. For them to cultivate and process the cultivate the reading habit, I would say. The last part of the question, could you, if you mind repeating it?
Sure, ma'am. It's just that what would you advise to aspiring writers? As you know, we have young hidden authors amongst us, young children. Yes. So what would you advise them?
So to all aspiring writers, I would say that, they should be bold enough to chase their dreams, because writing is not given the same pedestal as the sciences and, other areas. And you should make writing as part of your extracurricular, not just a hobby. For extracurricular, we are accountable to ourselves, right? I mean, probably, take to blogging. I mean, those days we used to maintain diary entries, right? When there was, before the internet age. So writers should aspiring writers should blog on a regular basis on different topics. They need not just be like, a diary entry, but different topics which inspires them or which kindles the fire in them. And they should try to network, definitely. I mean, those who are, of course, there's an age criteria for getting into social media. Those who are of that age category should network with peer writers, participate actively in, poetry workshops or literature fairs which happen, as part of the school events or which happen within the city. For instance, Bangalore has these literary hubs which happen in Ata Galata. And of course, there are these annual poetry fests also which are conducted. Because these, as I said, explore the language in various latitudes, and and we derive insights from renowned authors and poets, and also those from other fields of life. So there is it expands the dimension of thinking, horizons of thought, as I would put it that way. Yeah.
Wow, that was really insightful. I could actually relate to your point about the blueprint because my favorite author was the Victorian writer Thomas Hardy, and I was deeply influenced by the vivid imageries that he used in his novels. So I'm sure our viewers feel empowered with knowledge, and this will surely give the hidden authors the right impetus to take up that pen and begin writing. So thank you so much, dear guests. So we have now completed the questions round. We now have something very interesting waiting for us. Some of our students are very keen to have the rapid fire round with our guests, and I'm sure our speakers will enjoy as much as we would. So, dear guests, brace yourself up for the questions to answer in quick succession, the first thing that comes to your mind. Over to you, Nandita.
Good evening, everyone. I am Nandita Bhatt. Today, I have the honor of asking Uma ma'am these entertaining rapid fire questions. My first question is, if you could be a character from any book, who would that be?
I think Bertram Wooster from P.G. Wodehouse, because he lives in a typical utopian world, so cut off from the harsh realities. So yes, Bertram Wooster from P.G. Wodehouse.
Oh, that character seems to resonate with all of us. Moving on, if you had to choose between only writing and only reading for the rest of your life, what would you be? What would you choose?
That's a toughie. Yes, I don't think they both kind of coexist. I mean, if one writes, one has to read invariably. So I would definitely seek an alternative, a middle path, if there is one.
I mean, that was a really tough decision to make, honestly.
Okay.
But moving on,
Yeah.
if you met yourself 20 years ago, what advice would you give?
To be less confused, to have greater clarity, and have greater clarity and chase my dreams.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that sounds like a good advice we all can follow. Your words seem to motivate all of us. My next question is an interesting one. If you could co-write a book with any author, living or dead, who would it be?
Ruskin Bond. Ruskin Bond primarily because he's so tuned to nature, and I am a nature lover. And the way he brings out vivid imageries of Dehradun or Uttarakhand, I would any day like to be, his intern, his apprentice. I don't even want to co-write, but as his apprentice, I would love to go.
Yeah, that sounds like a dream come true for most of us. Following up, which is that one book that you would advise everyone to read?
There are many books which are my favorites and which I would recommend everybody. For, let's say, nonfiction, I would advise The Atomic Habits. I don't recall the exact title, and I don't even recall the author. Atomic Habits and The Sapiens, if you want to learn about the history of mankind. The Sapiens by Yuval Harari. Okay, and for fiction, yes, if we really cherish and relish the language and all its depth, breadth, and depth, so I would recommend P.G. Wodehouse and The Small Bachelor by P.G. Wodehouse.
Thank you for that suggestion. I'm sure that's on all of our to-read lists now. Finally, for our last question, what has been the best compliment you've received from a reader?
That my poetry has soul. I think that is something which is, inspired me to write during the worst lows of my life. So yes, that's kept me moving.
That must have been really encouraging for you. I have personally thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you, ma'am. I hope you were thrilled answering these questions. Thank you, everyone. This is Nandita Bhatt. Thank you. This is Nandita Bhatt signing off. Over to you, Anag.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anag Bagchi, and I will be asking some rapid-fire questions to Dr. Deepthi Sharma. So, are you ready for the rapid-fire round, Deepthi ma'am?
As much as I can.
For our first question, you are a nature enthusiast. Which is your most favorite nature poem or poet?
Very difficult question. It has to be Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. As a kid, I had memorized it and wanted to see the tiger a lot of times because of that. So it has to be my favorite.
Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright by Ruskin Bond, I believe.
Not Ruskin Bond. I forget.
No?
William Blake, if I'm not wrong.
Oh, well, that is a legendary poem indeed, and I'm sure many of us can relate to your opinion.
Yeah.
Now,
Spell the
for my
tiger
next question.
T-Y-G-E-R, so when you Google it, be sure you spell it that way.
Yes. So, what is a ritual, routine, or superstition that you follow before or after writing a book?
Absolutely nothing. I'm extremely indisciplined as an author and very unritualistic and really horrible in that way. So I'm sorry I couldn't give you an interesting ritual, but I have none. So sorry.
I see. Well, some of us are practical in that way. Moving on to the next question. Could you mention a challenge that you faced in your writing journey?
See, I'll tell you this. Writing is something which is, it's kind of like a conversation. An author writes a book that is like a one-sided conversation. It's like asking a question, sort of. And you get an answer from the reader, right? So finding the right reader who will understand your question and probably answer it in the way you are expecting, or maybe not expecting, but getting satisfied by that answer. That is a challenge which I feel I have faced a lot.
Yes, and all of us face such challenges, and overcoming them does give us a true sense of achievement. And next up, paperback, hardcover, ebooks, or audiobooks?
Always paperback. Hardbacks are too heavy for me, and I like the smell of paperbacks too much. And Kindle and Audible, I am too old-fashioned for them.
Yes, that's a choice I'm sure a lot of us, including me, can relate. Moving on to the next question. What is the strangest thing that you have researched for a book?
Bioluminescent fungi. I've seen it once in my life when I was in a place called Bhima Shankar in Maharashtra near Pune. So this fungi, it's a mushroom really. It will glow green in the dark. I've seen it once, but that is it. Not much data is available on it. But I was so mesmerized by seeing them as a student that I wanted it to be one of the elements in one of my books. And so I had to research a good deal on it.
That is really rather unusual. And now for my final question. If you could time travel, which era would you visit for writing inspiration?
I'm a huge fan of Agatha Christie and P.G. Wodehouse, you just mentioned, they both coexisted. So I'll definitely love to travel in that time and, shake Mrs. Christie's hand if possible.
That's an interesting choice. Thank you so much, Deepthi ma'am, for answering my questions so patiently.
Thank you. Thanks for asking those lovely questions.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun in this session, and I hope you felt the same.
Oh, yes.
This is Anag Bakshi signing off.
Wow, that was really an entertaining episode. So, to wind up the show, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed guests who graced our talk show today. Your insights, stories, and perspectives have illuminated the literary world and left our audience inspired and enriched. We are truly thankful for your time and willingness to share your expertise with us. To our viewers, your support is invaluable. We hope this discussion has ignited a passion for reading and writing. I thank our management, our principal, Dr. Manila Carvalho, our vice principal, Ms. Preeti Suta, for providing this platform where we can share and learn. I also thank our technical support team, Ms. Rashi and Ms. Pallavi, for helping us conduct this program seamlessly. Thank you, viewers, for joining us tonight. Until next time, keep exploring the realms of imagination through the written word. This is Meghna.
And this is Paramita,
Your host signing off for tonight. Good night, take care, and have a great weekend.